Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's video on Unified DLP in Microsoft 365. My name is Moss Libman. I'm a Principal Program Manager on the Microsoft Information Protection team. And today we're going to talk to you a bit about configuring and deploying our cloud-based data loss prevention solution. So Unified DLP in Microsoft 365 is our comprehensive solution that's designed to give you visibility and control over the life cycle of sensitive information as it's used throughout your organization. This data loss prevention solution is integrated right into the places where your users use and share sensitive data, such as Office services, Exchange Online, Teams, SharePoint and OneDrive, third-party cloud apps such as Salesforce or Box, as well as your Windows devices and on-premises file shares, so that you have visibility and control over all of the places where your users are using and sharing sensitive data. So let's go ahead and click in to show you what the solution looks like. Now, to start with, what I'm going to show you is a day in the life of an organization that's recently deployed Microsoft's data loss prevention solution. They've logged into the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center, which is your one-stop shop where you can find and manage all of your different information protection and data governance controls, such as communications compliance, information protection, insider risk management, and of course, data loss prevention. Now, to start today, we're going to zoom into the data classification section of the Compliance Center, which gives you broad visibility to help you understand how and where your sensitive data is being used throughout your organization. Now, at the summary page, we get some high-level insights, tell you about where and how some of your labeled content is being used. But if we zoom into some of our explorers, we can see even more rich insights about the sensitive data in my organization. Now, here's an example. We've drilled into SharePoint to find a document that's been stored relating to a recent project that we've been working on that contains highly confidential information. This project, Obsidian, is a new chip design that we're sharing with some business partners, and it's imperative that while we collaborate and share with this data, it continues to be protected and used and accessed by only the right people within our organization. So with the Content Explorer, you get that visibility not only to understand what data is sensitive, but actually see the content in real time, preview it if you have the right permissions, and understand where and how that data is being used. Another important component of the data classification section is the Activity Explorer. The Activity Explorer gives you broad visibility into how and where that sensitive data is being used across your organization, and provides a variety of different filters that let you zoom in to really pinpoint and understand specific insights about your sensitive information. So for example, I can filter this view out of 83,000 events over the last couple of weeks and pinpoint specific activities that relate to risky egress points, such as copying sensitive data to a network share or potentially printing a document that has highly confidential data. So very quickly, I can zoom in the Activity Explorer to show me insights related to very specific types of activities, specific devices, so I can really pinpoint and understand how is sensitive data being used within my organization. Now, at the broad level, we get this nice timeline view that I can really understand maybe some high-level insights. But of course, if you can drill in, you get a full list of each of the different activities that fed into that histogram that we were looking at earlier, so that you can not only understand that something did happen, but you can zoom in. You can see what was the activity, who performed that activity, what kind of sensitive data was in it, where did they share it to, was the policy enforcement applied, so on and so forth. So with these insights, you really understand how is your sensitive information being used by your users? Is it being used in an appropriate way that's compliant with your data loss prevention policies? Which of course brings us to the next section of our demonstration here, which is to show you how our data loss prevention solution is configured and managed. So we've clicked on over here to the data loss prevention section of the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center. And here we see a variety of different sections that we use to manage different components of the solution. We have our endpoint DLP settings, where you can configure path exclusions and which apps are allowed to access sensitive data on your endpoints, as well as which services and browsers are allowed to access and share that sensitive data. We also have our policy controls. And this is where you turn on and create and define the specific ways and places where you want to protect your sensitive data. Now, our solution is founded on a notion of one policy to define what is sensitive, and then to apply that uniformly across your organization. So you don't need to manage multiple policies from multiple different places. You get one place to view and manage that cohesively. So we're going to go ahead and click in to create a policy. And to start with, we provide a number of templates out of the box that make it easy for you to get started with common regulatory or industry regulations related to sensitive data or potentially sensitive information types. In this example, we're going to go ahead and select our financial policy for PCI DSS data that will help us detect credit card information when it's stored and shared by my users across my organization. After naming our policies, something that was intuitive to my organization and how my users use my data, we'll switch on over to the locations. Now, within a policy, the locations define what places will I detect and protect the data. And as you can see, we have a number of different places that you can granularly scope your policy to. So you can choose the specific people's email addresses or email mailboxes that when they send sensitive data will be protected by this policy. For example, we'll go ahead and select a couple of different teams within my organization that will be subject to this financial related policy. Now, across each of the different locations, there's a variety of different granular controls that allow you to choose very specific types of places, such as the SharePoint site to which you want to protect, or the user whose OneDrive account has sensitive data that you want to protect, or of course the team's chat channels and messages that you want to scan for sensitive data and assure inappropriate information isn't shared with the wrong audience. Here we can see, as an example, I've chosen my endpoint devices where I can pick the people that will be subject to the policy that is included in this DLP control. For this example, I'm actually going to leave the scope to everybody in my organization. So the minute that their device is onboarded, they'll be protected by this policy. And last but not least, we have our Microsoft Cloud App Security, which allows you to extend the same policies that you have deployed across your Office services, your endpoint devices, to your third-party clouds. In this example, we've selected to deploy this to Box, Salesforce, and our G Suite in both the EU and US regions. As we can see, there are a variety of different controls or connectors that we've configured in MCAS that I can now directly configure and control right from my DLP policy in the M365 Compliance Center. Now, once I've configured all the locations where I want to deploy this policy, I can fine-tune the configuration settings in this policy to assure that it meets my specific objectives to protect sensitive data. Now, in this example, I picked a financial policy that protects credit card data, but I'd like to extend that to include additional types of data. Now, out of the box, we provide a number of built-in sensitive information types, about 100, and we're always extending and adding and fine-tuning these. So it's super easy for you to get started to find common types of information, credit cards, debit card numbers, social security numbers, different types of PII data. And you can use these in various different combinations. So you can really fine-tune what is the detection that you want to control in this policy. For example, I can choose to match and only apply this policy when all of the different sensitive types are detected in combination, or I could choose to detect them when any one of these are detected within the content. You have controls to choose how accurate is the match. Is this a loosely defined match that might find numbers that look like a credit card number but may not match a function check, versus a high confidence number that matches a variety of different corroborative evidence checks so that you have a very high confidence that the data that has been identified is the specific type of information that you've configured. And it doesn't stop there, of course. You can use our built-in sensitive information types as well as our sensitivity labels, and you can use these in combination so that you can find sensitive data that has PII terms and has been labeled or has not been labeled. So you have very granular controls to really pinpoint the type of sensitive information that you want to protect and how you want to protect it. Now, after choosing the specific types of sensitive data, what kind of information do I want to protect? This is where I now configure the specific outcomes that will occur when sensitive data is shared in any of those different workloads that I just saw previously. So for example, here at the top, I can choose if I want to notify my users in Outlook and OneDrive and SharePoint to tell them with a policy tip right in their Outlook application, hey, what you're working on is sensitive. You cannot share this externally, and to apply those restrictions in real time to ensure that the sensitive data is used appropriately. And we give you rich controls so that you can actually zoom in and customize who gets this notification, what appears in the notification. So you can use HTML-rich text, so you can get very customized and really put your organization's brand on what users see when they receive a notification from any of these different locations. In addition to determining what your users see when a given violation occurs, we also provide controls to give your admin the knob that says, hey, when do I want to notify my staff, my security admins, my data admins, when a given violation, an egregious violation, has occurred. In this example, we've given a default of 10 instances. So for example, if I see 10 unique instances of a credit card number in a document, that's something potentially suspicious that I may not want or expect my users to perform on a day-to-day function that are subject to this policy. So what I can do is I can pinpoint not only how many types of sensitive data must be present before the policy is applied, I can also now choose when I want to notify my admin. I could notify them right away, the minute I see this occur one time. Or I can fine-tune this and I can create an aggregated alert, which will only trigger when I see this same activity occur multiple times over a given time window. So for example, if I see my users printing a large volume of highly confidential data to a printer within an hour, that may be a suspicious signal that I want to go and investigate. So using the aggregated alerts, it makes it super easy for you to be able to pinpoint those types of activities and then take a corrective action as appropriate. So after we've pinpointed what type of restrictions we want to apply, we can now choose the types of activities that are restricted when users are affected by this policy. Now within our solution, you can choose different actions depending upon the place where that violation or that detection occurred. Now first we can see our Microsoft 365 locations like SharePoint, OneDrive, Exchange, and Teams. And here I can very easily create a policy that will block external access to sensitive data from being accessed by users that are outside my organization. However, at the same time, we'll stay out of the way when users are trying to collaborate internally. If they're sharing data internally, users are continue to be productive. They're not prohibited by the policy because only the external users are ever accessed from the content. Now, of course, users, as they perform their day-to-day duties, as they collaborate with external users, sometimes it's important and there is a genuine business function where a user may need to be able to share that data. So we give you the controls right integrated into the policy enforcement experience so that users can override that enforcement if you've enabled that control within the system. Now, of course, as users perform those override operations, all that audit telemetry and the visibility appears in the Activity Explorer in your alerts. So you continue to have visibility and understand when those types of activities occur without necessarily prohibiting your users from performing valid business functions. In addition to configuring the restrictions in our Microsoft 365 workloads, I also can configure the restrictions that are applied to my Windows devices. In this example, I can choose to block specific activities, or again, block with override. So the user sees the warning sign, is informed that what they're performing may violate a policy. They should really ensure that what they're doing is an appropriate use of the information. But if they have a proper business use, they can click that override button and continue upon their job function. And last, and as I showed previously, is extending your DLP solution to third-party clouds and third-party apps and services where users may also be sharing and accessing sensitive data. So in this example, I can choose the specific cloud services, Box, G Suite, Cisco, Dropbox, Salesforce. In this example, based upon the configuration that was chosen earlier, I can now choose what restrictions are applied to content when it's discovered in those places, matching the sensitive data criteria that I demonstrated earlier. So in this example, we're going to go ahead and turn on a variety of restrictions that assure that when the wrong kind of data is uploaded to Box, to Dropbox, we're going to remove external access so that if users happen to share content in the wrong way, we're ensured that that external access is removed. Users internally to your organization continue to access and use the content unprohibited. Now, after you've chosen the restrictions that you want to apply to each of the different locations that you're protecting with this policy, we now will get to choose whether we want to turn this on right away or if I want to start it in test mode. Now, test mode is a very powerful feature because it allows you to get started effectively today, turning on your DLP policies without impacting any users. So you can start to really understand what would be the impact of this policy to my users within my organization if I were to turn this on. So you can start to fine-tune and really refine the specific activities and types of sensitive data that you restrict before you even start to affect your users. Now, once you've configured and saved your policy, It takes roughly an hour for this to deploy across your organization and start to enforce across the sensitive data that's stored in those locations. So now that we've seen what it looks like to configure and set up your cloud-based DLP solution, let's switch on over to show you what some examples of the end user experience look like. So as users are working on sensitive data that's subject to the policy that you've configured, what is the user experience and how are users interacting with our data loss prevention solution? Now, in this example, we are logged into a SharePoint site that contains that Project Obsidian specification that we talked about earlier, that contains sensitive data that we need to protect from being inappropriately accessed by people outside my organization. Now, within the view, you can actually see there's a little icon on this document that indicates that this contains sensitive information. And if the user clicks into this icon, there's actually additional details that they can get that will tell them precisely what is the information in this policy. It contains some sensitive information. Some of the things that I normally am able to do may be affected. And if I click this policy tip link right here within the SharePoint experience, as I'm working on seeing this data, I can see a policy tip that tells me a variety of information. It helps keep me informed as my data that I'm using is subject to these policies. It tells me that it's protected by an organization policy and what restrictions may apply. Well, I can't share this with people outside my organization or with an anyone link because it's sensitive data. Why is it sensitive? Because it has credit card information in it. So this is very powerful for both an admin to be able to give this communication to the end users in language that they understand so that when the content that they're working on is affected by policies, they have that understanding and the system is working on their behalf rather than punishing them for seemingly doing something that they didn't even know was incorrect. And of course, right within natively in the policy tip experience, there's options to, for example, report this as a false positive. If the user has observed that this is not an appropriate match or an appropriate enforcement of this policy, they can give the administrator a signal to tell them that this may not be an appropriate use. And if the option to override this enforcement was provided here, similarly, those appear right here within the native experience. So users don't need to go to a different workflow in order for them to interact with or override their policies. Similar to the integration of the policy tip experience, the same integration exists natively within the share experience. As you saw earlier, this policy is configured to restrict sharing this content with people outside my organization. So right within the share experience, the ability to even select that anyone link has been grayed out. And the reason that that's the case is because this content is subject to that DLP policy that restricted or applied that restriction. So again, as the user is in real time working on the sensitive data, as they're attempting to collaborate, they get real-time visibility into how and where their content is affected and who and where they can share their data. Another example is our integration with Teams. Here you can see an example where a user has shared said sensitive data related to Project Obsidian with an external user within their organization. And right within the Teams app, whether that's on their mobile device, whether that's in the browser or on their desktop, they see a consistent notification experience that informs them that the data was sensitive. It explains to them why the data was sensitive, and it gives them the options. In this example, we can see an override option integrated right within Teams. So the user has the option to provide that business justification, to override and share that information if they have a valid business need. And of course, throughout this entire process, all the telemetry and the insights relating to when users are performing this activity continue to feed up into the Activity Explorer and into your Activity Feed API so that you have those alerts and the visibility from an administrative and from a data admin perspective to assure that the right thing is happening to your data. Another important piece that we showed you in the prior example of this policy was extending this policy to third-party clouds. For example, here I have a sensitive document, Project Obsidian again, that I'm uploading to Box. And again, due to the policy that I've configured in the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center, as soon as the Microsoft Cloud App Security detects that this sensitive information is present, the external access is removed from this content and the user is notified through your normal notification controls, whether that's through an email, through a chatbot that you may have set up. So your users, again, continue to be informed and aware as they share sensitive data and are never surprised when their productivity is potentially impacted. So in summary, hopefully you have a better understanding of how to control the ever-expanding and explosion of sensitive data within your organization, how to get a better control of how and where that data is being used, whether it's on premises, in a cloud app, or on a user's device. And what are the options that you have available to protect that data when that sensitive information has been detected, when it's been labeled, or when it has a credit card number that shouldn't be shared appropriately. And of course, how all this ties together into our solution through the Activity Explorer, through our policy controls and our alerting systems, so that your administrative staff has full awareness and control over that data and can continue to fine-tune your policies so that they meet your organization's data protection needs. And we have a number of useful links that you can use to really learn more about our Microsoft information protection solutions, from our documentation to our blog posts where we announce various different updates, to, of course, our SDK documentation, where you can learn about application integration with our information protection solutions. We, of course, also have our Yammer Forum, and please come and join us and share your feedback with us on how you're using our solution. Our Yammer Forum is an active place where we have a variety of different folks from both the product group as well as customers that are actively using our solution. And it's a place for you to share with us what your experiences are, tell us what you need most, and allow us to have a two-way conversation with you as you use and protect your sensitive information. Thanks so much for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed the video.